All right. Welcome back to the SaberCast Nsfl edition. This is your host, Sweetwater. Today we're going to be talking about our preseason predictions and kind of what's been going on in the preseason and in the offseason. It's been a little while since our last podcast. So today in the studio, as usual, I have Casey Colby in here with me. Casey Colby, how you doing?
Life's good. Glad to be back.
Thank you for coming back. Hey, I honestly did not expect you to become a regular guest here, but that's what it kind of seems like it's become. I'm always glad to have you. At some point here, I'm going to have to bring somebody else in, but we'll hit that road when we come to it. So we'll start where we left off kind of with our last podcast, which is we had analyzed the draft. Now we have the offseason to look forward to, and we've had the offseason, obviously. So we've had some pretty big moves go on in there. What do you think was the biggest move of the offseason?
Unfortunately, it's got to be the Arizona-Colorado one, man. It's a shame that the Outlaws, like every time, like, you know, when we did the draft, which team came away the best? Like the Outlaws, and what was the biggest trade?
The Outlaws.
It's the Outlaws. But like, it is them.
It is. Dwyer keeps getting these huge deals coming on. He's got. I mean, you'll hear it when my conversation with comes out, but they do their homework, man. But you know, you can do your homework all you want, but it takes some magic to make these big trades happen, and Dwyer seems to have that down.
Yeah, on this one though, I'm not sure how much of this was a testament to Dwyer's ability and how much spoke to me Maestro's ability.
That's very true. We had that big move where we had our Colorado GMs kind of step down, and we had our first really rookie GM step up, because obviously everybody's a rookie GM season one, and season two we're kind of feeling our place out, and some guys were deciding that the league wasn't quite for them or the GM responsibilities weren't quite for them. But now that we're in season three, we have GMs that have been entrenched. We've got entrenched in a good way. They've been around a while. It's been 2 seasons. They've had some time to develop their skills, develop their teams, kind of see a vision. But the Yeti have just kind of dropped all of that, and now they have a brand new GM coming in with no experience as a season three player just drafted, and now he's a GM. That's a big role to step up into.
Yeah, and I think that his inexperience with the specific personalities of the league was one of the things that cost him as well. I'm sure we'll be talking about that later.
Definitely. Well, I mean, so we've got that big Colorado trade. We've got, Felipe Carter going over, Myron Jackson swapping places there. Just kind of filling stuff out, allowing the Outlaws, who have, as we discussed in our draft podcast, took 3 defensive backs, 3 cornerbacks, one of them a wide receiver who was going to convert, now don't have to do that. They've got Felipe Carter stepping in there. Isaiah Rashad still playing, in my opinion, above his ability, but still putting out the good points. Now they have a third wide receiver.
So actually, after this, they sent down Isaiah Rashad to the DSFL.
I didn't see that. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's amazing. Fuck it, I'll get ahead. I was going to talk about this later. But they sent down Isaiah Rashad, Big Bot, who was acquired in the trade, Joseph Tchakchuk. All 3 of these guys would make any other NSFL team's roster, and in fact be a starter on some teams.
Yeah, on most teams.
They sent them down to the DSFL in what is just an amazing troll move.
Yeah. I can't believe it myself, but I know a couple of them had been coming off of the activity and had not been showing up as much as possible. But we'll definitely dive into that a lot more later. But, man, the Outlaws really do seem locked and loaded to win another Ultimus, just be 3-peat. We're looking at a dynasty already here. Hopefully some teams start coming up and start getting the big guys in, getting some really active players and start going to take them down. So, we've got this big trade. We got some other big movements happening too in offseason. The Yeti didn't just make the one trade with the Outlaws. They seem to be having a fire sale. The next big one I think of is the Blaster Blade deal.
Yeah, that one was actually kind of surprising.
I understood that he was kind of up for trade. I had received some inside info on who their untouchables were and who their untouchables weren't. And I guess you look at it and you go, okay, obviously you got the main guys, you've got Noble, and you've got, our big players, but I glanced over the fact that Blaster Blade was not on the Untouchables list, and kudos to Legion for going up and picking that up. They needed a good defensive end and a good active one, and Blaster Blade shows up.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I think this was really big because after the Ramrio trade with Liberty, I said that the only thing that the Legion had going for them was that amazing combination of Ramrio and Cox in the middle. Most teams are kind of weak on offensive line in the middle of the line. And so having that dominant pass rush from inside as well as the run stop was kind of the only thing that whole team had going for it. And so I think Blaster Blade, while obviously not up to the same ability as Ramrio, still gives someone they can put next to Vinny Cox to kind of overload one side of the line.
Yeah, they got, 3/4 of their line shored up here? Arguably one of the better defensive lines in the NSFL now. With this Blaster Blade, and he's only going to continue to get better, especially with the kind of tapering off that TPE effects have. That line is going to start being scary. I know we joke about how bad the Legion is, and I know you've got that bet going on, but that bet's got to be looking a little bit iffier now that they're actually starting to make some big moves in free agency.
I'd be laughing a little more comfortably if they hadn't made the trade, yeah.
All right, so we had that big one, and they also moved Blaster Blade and their receiver John Ross.
Yep.
So,
but they had to, and this is the biggest thing about the Arizona trade.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who the fuck has beef with who in this league. This is the only league I'm in. Obviously there's a lot of stuff that happens from the other leagues,
right?
Where players have history. I didn't know about any of that. I don't know who's happy with who. I don't know which players like being on which teams. But the moment they traded with Arizona, you've got a team that has 4 starting caliber wide receivers. Obviously, they have to make a trade.
Right.
And so I actually messaged him asking which receiver he needed to unload because I knew he had to unload one.
Okay.
And I think when you make it that obvious, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. And I think the Legion got the better end of that trade with the Yeti because of that.
I would agree with you there. So I think the Outlaws got the better end of the trade in the first deal. I think the Yeti the Legion got the better end of the deal in the second deal. I don't see. Do you see? And we'll talk about this later. We'll definitely bring it up later. But this definitely doesn't bode very well for the Yeti. All right. Is there? Am I missing? Those are the big deals. Those are the huge deals. Are there any other?
You are missing one other deal, and it is also Colorado.
I figured they were doing one more deal here.
So this one involved the Wraiths. The Wraiths gave up Bryce Boggs, a third and a fifth, and the Yeti gave up Wyatt Folden in 2 seconds.
Okay. That's an interesting one.
It's amazingly interesting in that Folden is currently higher TPE than Boggs. Now, obviously, Boggs is a Season 3 rookie. Folden's a Season 1. So, the expectation is that Boggs may catch up.
Right.
But the Wraiths got a higher TPE player as well as the better draft picks.
Yeah.
Huge steal by the Wraiths because the Wraiths really just needed a good linebacker. I know I'm kind of shitting on myself by saying that, but I built Cushing as kind of a key gadgety player. He's not a run stopper. He's not this guy. This is where you're going to put him every game, and this is exactly what you can expect from him. Fulton is. This is a guy who can either play a pass rusher from the outside or just be an amazing run stopper right now. And we needed that. We needed someone reliable in the 7, especially now that we've got a working line. But we've also got 2 second-round picks for next year. And I got to be honest, the way the DSFL is developing, I don't think a third and a fifth, well, a third might be worth something. A fifth, I think that's going to be garbage next year.
I don't think fifths pan out almost ever anymore in the NSFL. That's not to say that there aren't diamonds in the rough. That you 5th-round picks out there aren't worth anything or anything like that. That's not what I'm implying. What I'm saying is, in this league, realistically, anything after the 3rd round, and we talked about this in our draft recap, is kind of a crapshoot. I mean, you're getting guys who have either just joined the league or have sporadic activity. And when you look at those two things, with the number one success story in the Nsfl when it comes to drafting, and the reason these guys go first overall is because they're active, because they're incredibly active. We saw that the biggest one of those is my team's pick at number 4, Benson Bailey with Bailey Island, who was on nobody's draft board but put out 5 huge couple thousand-word articles and had been updating regularly and had been active in the Discord and active in everything. I mean, activity breeds activity, and activity breeds success. And the reason the Outlaws are so successful is because they have the highest amount of active players. And, you know, if you're picking in the 5th round and you've got a guy who's just joined, you have no idea whether or not he's going to be active. And if you got someone who's sporadically active, you kind of have an idea of how little activity you're going to get out of them. So I feel like, the Rakes getting 2 seconds out of that's huge.
Absolutely, especially since Fulton has been very active since coming back to the league. So I don't feel like we really lost anything in terms of activity.
No, you didn't. And you traded a linebacker for a linebacker, so it's not like you lost out on a position of need for a different position of need. You just swapped for arguably a better player, not necessarily in terms of I don't know about his activity levels because I haven't followed him specifically, but you know, you got the higher TPE player, you got the higher picks. I think the Yeti GMs need to really take a look at what they're doing, really up their negotiation tactics and figure out what's going on, or they're just going to keep losing these high-value things for possibly not payoffs.
The problem is we knew what the Yeti needed.
Right.
And it's, again, it goes back to the Outlaws thing. When you keep tipping your hand to the entire league, we're going to take advantage of it. You know, we knew that they needed someone else who could step up and be a co-GM.
Okay.
And we had one of the best players to do it. Dave wanted to be in a GM role.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
so that was
on the Rakes, the best we could offer him was kind of an assistant GM spot because First Cap is a capable GM and has been doing the job pretty much solo and doing a great job of it.
Yeah.
And part of the reason he does that is because he doesn't have a co-GM. He basically has a cabinet, you know, of me, of Ballerstorm, of Yagen, and Vovo. I'm probably forgetting someone, who all will look at different players and say, hey, this is what I like about this person, you know, and looking at different team situations. So I don't think he really wanted an equal, which is what Dave wanted to be. So when the Yeti made it clear that they were looking for it, we knew that we had the best candidate for that.
Okay.
And so we got the better on-field player for the locker room player that they needed.
I got you. You know what? I had not thought of it that way, but that totally makes sense now that you say that, is that Dave is definitely a locker room guy. He's super active. He's going to be a star in the league at some point. He's going to be the focal point of that linebacker core. But I can see why they would have definitely taken that, and why they would have given up so much to get him, because they did need somebody to help hold the reins with the main maestro to figure out what the heck's going on and to kind of get this team in a position to make trades that they are on the opposite end of right now. All right, so those are the big 3 of those. Were there any other kind of mitigating ones? I feel like, for the most part, anything else was relatively small. Maybe trading a couple picks here or there, the
rest were just draft picks, and we kind of talked about those in the draft recap.
Right, okay. So, moving out of the offseason, we're now getting into the preseason. We've got teams with some new players. We've got our first look at the teams coming into these years. Who are your standout? Let's start with standout teams. Who do you think is a team that looked better in preseason than we expected?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I'm gonna have to go Yeti. It's tough because really, again, I want to say the Outlaws, but we knew that they'd be tough, so I want to pick someone else.
Okay.
I feel like the Yeti have shown, you know, with the guys that they acquired, they worked their ass off on putting together a viable strategy for preseason, and it worked.
Yeah.
You know, they won both their preseason games.
Yes,
now,
they did.
Granted,
who did they play?
They played the Cats and the Liberty. They won 20-14 over the Cats. but 27-9 over the Liberty.
Well, that's pretty impressive, but I do want to remind people that the Cats, not everybody's top team, and the Liberty have just thrown in a brand new quarterback, a season 3 quarterback, into the mix.
Both valid points.
I would agree with you that I did not expect the Yeti to win both games. And we'll cover other things option. If I had to pick a number 2, and it's going to be a homer pick, I'm going to say the SaberCats, who beat the Wraiths out of all people.
Well, but it was in San Jose.
It was in San Jose, so there was a bit of home team advantage, but the last couple of matchups between us have gone decidedly in your favor, even at home.
That's true.
We can definitely talk about that. We'll break down some individual team stuff a bit later. So we've kind of discussed who has outperformed what we expected, who has underperformed compared to what you've expected.
I mean, haven't talked about how the Liberty, lost at home. It's got to be them.
Yeah.
Did anyone else lose at home? I don't think so.
I don't think anybody else really lost at home.
Deleted, but I unfortunately I feel that they're kind of a given.
Yeah, we know. If we're talking about underperformed, seeing the Legion lose, and I feel bad saying this because I don't want to shit on the Legion as much as we do, but at this point, it is kind of expected that the Legion are going to lose, and
yeah,
so they're not underperforming if they lose. If you expect nothing and get it, that's not really underperforming. If they had won one,
and honestly, I feel Liberty underperformed more than the Legion in that the Legion went on the road against Baltimore and put up a disturbingly close game. It was, I want to say, 20-0 at the half or something like that. Final score of 26-21.
That's impressive. I'd say that was a higher score than I would have ever imagined.
Yeah,
especially 20-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's break it down a little bit further and go. Who are your? Are there any standout stars you would take away from the preseason? Let's talk about before. Let's kind of break this up. Let's talk about veterans. Are there any veteran stars that you think shined a little bit brighter during preseason?
I'm gonna start with the easy homer pick and say Bubba Nutt for the Yellowknife Wraiths. Against the SaberCats, he had 23 rushes for 107 yards.
Yeah.
And he had 24 rushes for 105 yards against Liberty. Now, neither of those teams have amazing front sevens. I have to be fair.
Yeah.
But in a league where we were seeing an average of, 3.5 yards per carry was the league average, to see a guy averaging well over 4.
Yeah, decently over phenomenal. 4. 4.1, 4.2-ish. Yeah. That's solid. That's NFL style. Like, that's what you want in a good NFL. I mean, that's what you want. So 4.4 or 4.2, anything over 4, I consider great, honestly. Because if you're over 4, that means you could run all 3 downs and get a first down every time. Theoretically. Obviously, that doesn't work in practice. But in ideal situations, to have a back that you can count on to get you those yards, get you almost halfway through your down on his first run, that's a big load off your back, and that makes other teams respect the pass or respect the run, and that makes your pass game open up. And we all know the Wraiths have an excellent pass game.
Admittedly, it didn't look great in preseason.
It did not. That brings it to my favorite breakout star. Obviously, I'm biased as hell, but John Canton introduced Canton Island this preseason in the first 2 games with 3 pass deflections and 2 interceptions. Now, I will admit that giving up a touchdown to Baller Storm on a corner blitz, which there's heavy discussion about the corner blitzes here, so we can get into that in a much different time. But that was the only pass I let up. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Were there any? I feel like Luke Leakley showed pretty good stuff in his outings. I think he got an interception, a couple pass defenses, a fumble recovery. Like he definitely showed up, and we had kind of knocked him a little bit in the Cards one about how he might not be deserving of it. But
oh no, I'm still knocking him. So the problem isn't that he's not putting up good stats. He put up great stats last season as well.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, you could plug any fucking linebacker into that role and they get the same stats.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look at Asaya Rashad. He had 126 TPE. He made the Pro Bowl last year.
That's true.
Just because when you have that kind of insane amount of quality around you, it just kind of forces plays to you.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, who else can we look at in terms of veterans standing out? Who was it? Was it Chris? Was it Orsaz who put up the absolute? No, it was King Bronco who put up an absolutely absurd 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 158 passer rating.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal game, and it won me some money on that new daily fantasy league. So,
is there any stopping Bronco? Is he now unofficially the best quarterback in the league?
I would say no. Bear in mind, he gets a ton of touchdowns and yards because the defense immediately gives him the ball right back every time he finishes with it.
Okay.
He's got a very decent core of wide receivers, and I think one of the best things that the Outlaws do if you watch their games, you can't say, I'm going to be on this receiver all game, because they mix up where their receivers are going to be. All 3 of their receivers are active, which means you're going to have a mismatch somewhere because there's going to be at least one wide receiver who is a lot better than the cornerback across from him, and they know that.
I could definitely see that one, yeah.
Their O-line is very active as well.
And they have the top-ranked tackle in
tight end Charlie Law, man, he is tearing it up fast.
Is he?
Yeah, he really is. He was.
I was gonna say I need to look into his stats, and I know tight ends are going to start becoming more important here as everybody else kind of rises up around him. The league was very, very wide receiver, running back focused for the first couple of seasons, but I've noticed in the sim it loves throwing to tight ends, and a solid tight end can start putting up real numbers and start moving the chains. They're always a threat to get like a quick 5-yard out, and they're always a threat to score a touchdown in the red zone.
It should be noted, though, that tight ends, if you look at Ricky Maddox from last year,
yes,
who I think most would say was the best receiving tight end in the league in terms of talent. George Wright was kind of right behind him in TPE, but he was a blocking. If you look at his numbers and you look at, Break Bottles.
Yeah, who's inactive.
Who's still in the hundreds. Their stats were very similar.
Yes, they were.
Look at Jesse Sanderson, for Baltimore.
Right.
He's still at 52. But one thing I will say is that tight ends are also a magnet for interceptions. We were trying to figure out why Chris Arose was throwing so many interceptions. And what we found out, I went and looked at other quarterbacks as well. Scrub QB threw 15 interceptions last year.
Okay.
6 of them were to the tight end.
Oh, wow.
For Arose, 3 of his interceptions were to Ricky Maddox.
Okay.
And remember, Ricky Maddox has like 80-something hands, great strength, great speed and agility for a tight end. This guy is arguably like the best target you could have.
Right.
3 interceptions went to him.
And, I think that comes into a little bit into something that I feel very strongly about, that I've definitely made my case about, and I'm sure you can go check it out and you'll see me running my mouth about it. But about the tight ends, the at least the vertical threat tight ends just not being fast enough, because they're outsped at every section by linebackers.
Yeah.
And we know speed is king in the sim. So if the guy you're more than likely going to be covered by is always going to have faster speed than you, then he's going to get the preference on the catch if he's going to stop it. And then it's just a matter of a roll of the dice for his hands. So on these receiving tight end, or these receiving linebacker, or not receiving, but pass defending linebackers who have 90 speed and have 50 hands, they're going up against tight ends who have 80 speed and 70 hands. And they're going to lose. The tight ends are going to lose when that roll of the dice happens every time. And it's just going to be a quick interception because that speed's there to cover it.
Yeah. And
obviously that's another thing that we bring up. I feel like this happens all the time in our podcast, and we just don't have enough time to talk about it. But there's always something that this is definitely a discussion for another day. And the tight end versus linebacker kind of thing is another discussion for another day. But I can definitely see why having a better tight end could help you avoid those when the QBs love to throw to tight ends.
So what I was kind of getting at was the stats of the tight end or the abilities of the tight end don't seem to matter in the sense.
Okay.
I feel like they're just saying that the tight end is going to be there for the dump off catch, but because you're kind of in the middle of the field, and that a lot of quarterbacks wait to throw to the tight end. He's rarely the
Right.
first read. That you're more likely to make a pressured throw to the tight end.
Well,
The tight ends get a lot more catches than they should. You'll see
yes.
games where the safety covering the tight end is better in every stat. Genuinely, I've seen that where every stat is better and the tight end gets catches. Similarly, you'll see cases where it'll be some scrubbed safety on him who will pick off the tight end. I don't think it's like a wide receiver versus cornerback matchup. I think the sim just kind of randomizes what happens with the tight end regardless of the talent involved.
Well, hopefully some of that changes when we eventually update to the new sim. But again, definitely another topic for another day. So I would love to talk with you about this more, but we should probably move on for the sake of time and clarity.
Okay.
Like I said, I would be glad to talk with you about this more. So the next thing up. Oh, and you know what? We were talking about Ricky Maddox there. We forgot to bring up the fact that he's one of the big offseason moves of him switching to defensive end.
Yes.
That is huge for the Wraiths. You guys get a nice, solid defensive end who's got a ton of TPE, is very active, and I feel like he was very effective in your games.
Already made a huge difference for us. So if you just take our one game against the Liberty, now obviously the Liberty gave up the most sacks last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Last year, the Wraiths really struggled to get pressure. We only had 47 sacks over 14 games. We had 8 sacks just against the Liberty.
Wow.
So that's over double our season 2 average.
Right.
So yeah, Maddox being there, as well as the rookies that we drafted, already we are seeing a completely different defense. In fact, I think most would agree that our defense was what kind of showed up against the SaberCats versus our offense.
Yes, you guys definitely showed up. It was good. Things were, if I'm looking at this at an unbiased stance, your defense has definitely shown improvement since last year, where you had that high-powered offense, but the defense didn't really help you get it done. So every score you guys had, you guys were kind of the Saints of the league. In a sense.
I was going to say Colts, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, Colts too, kind of. I don't think your defense was as bad as the Colts has historically been. But yes, the Colts are the Saints. Pick your favorite one. You guys were ultra high-powered offense and underwhelming defense. And that's fine. It got you into the playoffs. It got you whatever. But as you guys start to get that defense showing up, I'm going to be scared of what happens with the Wraiths here. I think you guys will be one of the first teams to really, you and the Otters are probably going to be the first teams to really push the Outlaws for that Ultimus.
Sounds like this is a great segue into what to expect for Season 3.
It is. I just want to point out one or two more things really quick. I apologize. I unintentionally segued. I wanted to ask you your opinion. I kind of have mine a little bit of who you think the rookie standouts were for the preseason games here. We've got some rookies coming in, some S3 players who just got drafted. Who do you think kind of stands out this year coming in?
So, like I said, Charlie Law for the Outlaws really, really worked his ass off, and I think he was part of the best lineup possible for Week 2, possibly Week 1 as well.
Okay.
So, for a rookie tight end, that's really tough to do.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously, Trey Willie, but I think that was expected. J.D. Boom was the guy who showed up both games.
Right.
I think everyone was talking about him both the Otters games. He made a ton of plays.
Yeah, definitely. And I would agree with all of those. I'm going to add to that. I've obviously got homer picks. I'm going to homer pick every time. This is the SaberCast. It is. There's a little bit of homer in there. Didn't show up in stats wise as much as you'd think, but our guy Calculated Chambers, Cake, as a defensive tackle who is not a glamour. That's not a glamorous spot. No matter what you do, it's not. But in his first 2 games, put up 2 sacks, put up 7 tackles, and really, really shored up the middle of our line. Every time you guys ran off to his side, especially with the DE on his side, it was when you guys ran off to the left, that was when it stopped. And it was him getting some of that pressure into the backfield and forcing you to bounce to the outside was great. So our DTs are shored up. Obviously, there's some other big standouts as well. But
I feel like our blockers really focused because you didn't see much from Dan Miller against us.
No, you didn't. I think Archon helped shore up that thing for you too. He's another one who I would think showed up
absolutely.
decently.
But what I'm saying is, I think that because Miller was eating up the blocks, Chambers maybe snuck through more often than he would have.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, you could have gone either way. We could have either stopped Chambers and let Miller in, or we could have stopped Miller and let Chambers in.
Right.
We cannot beat that tandem though next to each other.
No, they're gonna be a really solid line for us in the future. One other thing I wanted to mention, we talked about him earlier, Blaster Blade. I went through and looked at his stats. He put up something like 11 or 13 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks over his first 2 games. That's huge for the Legion. That is, I mean, that's a DE just going ham on other quarterbacks.
What's amazing is it appears he may have actually had a better game against, not may have, he had a better game against the Outlaws.
Yeah.
8 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks against the Outlaws.
Against arguably the best team in the league with one of the better lines in the league. That's a huge pickup for the Legion, and they should be happy about that. They're going to start definitely making some power. Obviously, if they keep shoring up their defense, that'll help the offense stay off the field a little bit longer and maybe not get as tired out, and maybe be able to put up some more points.
In fact, I think their first touchdown in preseason was a defensive touchdown.
Was it really?
I believe so. I'm not entirely confident. They did get one though.
I do remember our first. Oh, another standout is Zhang, the wide receiver for the Outlaws, who was going to switch to cornerback, and after the Felipe Carter pickup, scored our first touchdown of the Nsfl preseason.
Yeah, and by the way, I did confirm. Stanislaw Maddox got the first touchdown of the preseason for the Legion.
Did he?
Yeah, it was an interception of QB to Matthew Vincent.
Okay, there we go. Stanislaw Maddox, who is another cornerback who I'm gonna say it. I believe he's outperforming his TPE. He's got about 180, 190, and put up a killer game against that first one, and then was kind of nowhere to be seen in the next one. But the Sims kind of like that sometimes. You'll have star cornerbacks put up stupid numbers or put up no numbers, and it's whatever. But he's definitely a shutdown corner for the most part for the Legion. He's their top corner right now. But we'll see what happens as we move through the year. If he stays inactive, do the Legion start seeding more throws or start seeding more passing yards?
Right now, he's capable enough with that pass rush to help him.
Right. Yeah, the pass rush is going to make the biggest difference for them.
If their defensive line doesn't keep putting that pressure, he's going to get exposed fast.
Yep. All right, so we're kind of talking about that, and that itself kind of leads us into what our expectations are for the league for the coming season here. So let's kind of go team by team a little bit, say what we think. I know you've put out a great article explaining what you believe the projected season records are for each team. I don't have anything that specific myself, but I'd love to kind of go back and forth here about what we expect. So let's start with our expected Ultimates champions, the Outlaws. It's
a shame that we're all so comfortable talking about him like that. I'm not saying anyone's wrong. Like I completely agree.
I know. But I feel like the Outlaws are kind of like the Patriots in that example. Not that they're going to. Obviously, the Outlaws have one extra step. They're going to go to the championship game every year. But the Patriots are perennial contenders. They're always. True. You can sit there and go, well, they're going to get to the championship, the AFC or the AFC championship game every year. So, and that's the Outlaws are going to get to the AFC championship pretty much every year, which is for us ends up being the Ultimates.
Yeah.
Due to the lack of teams.
It's actually a really good point. The Otters versus Outlaws game, for the AFSC championship was amazing to watch. It was close. It was tense. It had that feeling of just one mistake and you're done.
Right. And actually, I had seen someone post either on the forums or the Discord today that the true Ultimates championship sometimes feels like the ASFC championship. Because we have two of the more close teams. And then we get into this Ultimates, and it's just kind of a blowout.
Yeah, not kind of. Mark Strike had a lot of time on the field. I mean, I want to say they played their backups pretty much the entire fourth quarter. I want to say like at 13:50 is when
Oh,
their
jeez.
starting quarterback walked off the field for the last time. 13:50 remaining in the fourth quarter.
Right.
It was just embarrassing.
Yeah, it is.
Follow that with what, a 2 or 3 point game over
Right.
the Otters the week before? Yeah.
Yeah, so we expect the Outlaws to go the distance again. They've made the huge trades. They've made the good draft picks. They're the most complete team in the league now, arguably. I don't see them not winning the Ultimates. As for their record, I have a feeling they might drop one more than next year. I think you said that too in your article. I mean, if all the other teams are kind of getting better, someone has to get worse. And I mean, you'd think it would come from the team that won 12 last year.
Yeah.
Maybe they drop one due to home field advantage, or maybe they drop one just due to weird play calling or whatever. It doesn't matter. But yeah,
I think it's just going to be sim mandated any given Sunday.
Yep.
I think they're going to be favored in at least 12 games next year.
Yeah, easily.
But I think there's just going to be that one random game, just like the Legion was able to beat the Yeti in Colorado once last year.
Right.
They're going to have those random things happen to them.
Well, and I've talked about it before. The sim does give you as the away team, like usually around a 25% chance to win starting for the most part. They and through my testing, 1 in 4 sims, I put the believe it or not, I put the Legion up against the Outlaws from week 6 or 14 of last year, and just ran it 4 times with the Legion being away, and 1 out of 4 times the Legion pulled it off. And I ran it
ridiculous.
I ran it like 12 times because I'm like, that was just not going to happen. In 12 times, they won 3. Like, the sim stays pretty true to it. I was surprised. But, so, now obviously you don't get a chance to play them 4 times in a row. So, you only get to play them twice. Which side of the dice are you going to get this time? But it'll be interesting to see who they drop their games to. Or if they go undefeated. Could they be their first undefeated team? Absolutely. That's a possibility. I hope it doesn't happen, but it's definitely a possibility. All right, so let's go to the next one. Yeah, unless you had something to weigh in on that.
No, I was just going to say it'd be a huge slap in the face if Arizona goes undefeated, but the Legion still managed to win a couple games.
That would be unfortunate for you. So the next team, I believe, in my hypothetical, theoretical power rankings, my next team would probably be either the Otters or the Yeti.
So, Yeti's a very dangerous prediction. So I guess you go pro, I'll go con for the Yeti.
Okay, I'll go pro because that's easier for me, and you know your team better, so that makes sense. So pros for the Legion, they have
the Yeti.
The Yeti. No, not the Yeti. Did I say the Yeti? I thought I said the Wraiths.
You said the Yeti. That's why I said I was surprised by that one.
Oh, man. I meant to say the Wraiths. I'm sorry. The Otters or the Wraiths are my next in the power ranking. I don't know why I said
so I'm going to say the Otters are a risky pick this year then.
Okay.
Tell me that you're pro for the Otters, and I'll do the con.
All right. My pro for the Otters. They have though they are not the best in any one position, they are above average in most of them. They have one of the better quarterbacks in the league in Mike Boss, who, while he has a tendency to throw a pick every now and again, definitely can put up the yards when needed. Their receiver duo or trio, whichever one you want to call on, is decently solid enough that they're not going to be outmatched or outclassed by everybody in the league. They'll kind of be like what we talked about with what the Hawks were, or what the Outlaws were, where one of their receivers is going to be a mismatch somewhere. They have a solid running back. He's not the best in the league. He's not the worst in the league. He does what he needs to do, gets by. And they have their defense is kind of the same way. They have a solid enough core in every position where they're not going to get blown out of the water by anybody, but they're not going to amaze anybody. So they put up the stats when needed. They've been a postseason contender every year. They put up the most interesting games with the Outlaws last year. So I believe while they may not be the number 2 team, they are definitely a top 3 or top 4 team easily.
So I had them at actually number 3 this year.
Okay.
So I think this will be the first season where the Ultimates could actually be more exciting than the AFSC Championship.
Okay.
I think that right now, like at this moment, they are probably, you could argue, number 2 or number 3.
And that's what I was saying. I had them and the Wraiths kind of back and forth. I've been going back and forth between the two.
However, I think by the end of the season, they will have dropped.
Okay.
From preseason last year to preseason this year, the only teams that gained less TPE than the Otters were obviously the Legion and the Yeti. The Yeti is because they traded away a ton of talent, though.
Okay.
The Otters just didn't put in the improvement. Now, we did lose 2 players to retirement, so not all of it is lack of work. But they are not an amazingly active team anymore. You know,
right.
What made them the season 1 powerhouse that they were is gone. And I think that they are beginning their decline.
Okay. I can see that happening. I know they've been losing players. People have been slowly but surely kind of disappearing from the Otters. And it hasn't been anything malicious or anything. It's just people go there, do put up some decent work, get a decent amount of TPE, and then slows down, and they eventually just kind of drop off. So I can see where you're coming from there. But I'd say right now, with the team they have versus the other teams that are there, they are definitely a number 2 or number 3, depending on what direction the wind is blowing and the barometric pressure of the day and whatever else fucking random shit you want to think about. It's kind of a toss-up for me between the two. But let's go on to the Wraiths, who are the other half of that coin.
Yeah, the Wraiths kind of only have one major problem right now, and it's a problem that I think you can empathize with for the moment. So you guys had Benson Bailey.
Yes.
And you saw that no amount of pass rush or amazing play by yourself can overcome a number 2 cornerback who just gives up every pass.
No, it cannot, and that's the downside of rookie or low TPE corners.
But here's the problem. You have a rookie corner. We have a season 1 corner doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Ours is not going to get better. Now, we are planning on thinking about moving a safety over to replace that corner.
Okay.
But the truth is, our secondary, outside of Lavelle, kind of weak. And we don't have an amazing pass rush. Don't be wrong. It's, like I said, it's getting pretty decent.
Right.
So that is a concern. And obviously, we're starting to see a lot of teams with pretty good 1-2 cornerback combos to where Garden and Cook, even though they're better than the guys across from them, aren't just able to absolutely destroy them due to diminishing returns.
Right. And
so there is concern there.
I was going to say, I think we started seeing that. I was up against, I don't know Ballerstorm's speed offhand.
I want to say he's at around a 91.
Okay, because I am at 90 now. So we start to see that a 91 over a 90 means the corner's starting to shut you down unless he does one of those dumb corner blitzes that are hopefully going to be removed from the league. But, we start to actually, now that we're in Season 3 and people are starting to get towards the maximum of their builds, we start to see players really get those diminishing returns. And between Josh Garden and Rain Delay, Bailey Cook, thank you. They're going to hit their max builds here in the next season or two. And the cornerbacks that they're going up against are going to be right there with them. And the question is, how much does having that much more, just, a point or two more than your competition really affect you at the top end, especially when it's costing you 15 TPE per point?
Yeah. I should point out, though, that Ballerstorm is an extremely well-rounded receiver.
Yes, he is.
He also has 90 agility.
Yeah.
So he's at a point to where he can start stacking either one and kind of have an advantage.
Right.
Bailey Cook, as a possession receiver, most cornerbacks are not set up to handle him. And this is what I love about football and kind of hate about our sim league.
Mm-hmm.
Is almost every fucking wide receiver and every cornerback is the same archetype. You got your man-to-man corners and you got your speed receivers.
Right.
Which makes sense because man corner is the best counter to a speed receiver.
Right. And speed receiver is the best counter to the cornerbacks as a whole because you can stack that speed real quick.
False.
No? Well, I guess what I'm saying is in the theory of the sim, the speed...
No, what I'm saying is even within the sim.
Oh, okay. I would argue that the speed corner or the speed runner, because he can get that 100 speed, is great. But I can understand what you're saying with the possession because they've got that strength. They can win the 50-50 balls.
Exactly. The strength in those hands,
Mm-hmm.
I think is huge. Once these possession receivers get that, 100 hands,
right.
No cornerback can come close to that. And that's how you win as any offensive player. Is to have an ability that the defender isn't close to, that you can exploit. You just need one.
Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but the way I've been led to understand the sim works is hands only matter for defenders, not in terms of 50-50 balls, but in terms of did they make an interception or did they make a pass defense? So when the sim goes up and the ball gets quote unquote thrown and the coin flips or the random number generates or whatever, and it decides that the defender has had enough speed and has enough agility and has enough endurance or whatever it uses, or intelligence, I don't know exactly what it uses, but whatever one of those stats it deems is appropriate for that defender to now be the one making the play on the ball, then it rolls another die to find out if their hands are good enough to make it an interception.
And you have discussed that with me. I don't think it was on a podcast. I think it was just the shit.
So it was.
If you look at Matthew Vincent's rookie year, he had nothing except for hands. His speed and his agility were garbage.
Okay.
But he still caught pass after pass after pass. So yeah, I think
right. And
I think the sim just accepts that a receiver is gonna get open sometimes.
Right.
Or maybe it's his height. I mean, there's so many variables.
Right.
But I do think, or maybe it's the strength that a lot of defenders don't have. Cornerbacks.
If the strength comes into it, where it throws up that RNG and it says, hey, this is a 50-50 ball, strength wins, then yeah, the receivers with the higher strength are going to win every time.
Yeah,
because cornerbacks have found
strength than speed. So.
And what we've noticed and what I've noticed in my experimentation is corners, and I think we're going to start seeing this soon, especially as corners start to max out their speed. I know most of the elite corners in the league, myself included, are trying to max out our speed because the speed receivers are doing that as well. Yeah. And getting beat deep is way worse than getting not beat but not being able to tackle right now. Because if you get beat deep, you're getting beat for a touchdown every time. Nobody's stopping that guy. But you can eventually bring him down. So now, once we start seeing maxed out speed corners, we're going to start seeing them pump up that strength and tackling so they can finally get their man down. But I think what you're saying about possession receivers will definitely have an effect. I mean, between that and agility things, right now the propensity of the league for most people, I don't know if this is true of you, I don't believe this is true of everybody, but for most people is to improve their TPE in a way that benefits them the most in measurable stats.
But I think you're just looking at yards. One thing that I noticed when we were looking at Chris Rose's interceptions, man, we've gone so far off topic. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. It's fine. It'll work.
Is not one interception was thrown to Bailey Cook by a Rose last year. Now, granted, Cook was only with the team 5 games.
Right.
However, this is a guy who threw 2 interceptions targeting Dermot Lavelle. How many times do you think he targeted him? He threw 3 interceptions targeting our number 3 receiver. He threw another interception to Levon Novell, again, another defensive back.
I am not disagreeing that a lower hands thing wouldn't possibly make it become a jump ball or make it become something else. What I am arguing is that people in the league, regardless of position, like seeing volume stats. And we have figured out, for the most part, not 100%, we're still finding things out about the sim as we go on, but we have found out relatively well which stats you can pump up first that lead to more significant volume stats, whether that be more tackles, more pass defenses, more interceptions, more yards, more touchdowns, more whatever. They're going for that. And then as we start to see those max out, we can start to see the separation once secondary stats come into play. I think we've seen that a little bit in Shane Weston, who, as you saw, dragged four defenders down the fucking field because he has 80 agility or 90 agility or something like that, 80 or 90 agility, and apparently they can't tackle him. So
that's what Garden tends to do too, yeah.
Yeah, see, so we're starting to finally find out how that impacts the sim, but when a lot of people do their testing, and I can attest, I do this myself, I don't watch the game a lot of times. Because I'm trying to do a bunch of sims really fast to just get numbers.
Yep.
And you don't have time to watch the whole sim. So you run 5 or 6 of them and you just skip the actual watching of it and you just see what the volume stats are at the end. And you change up stats and you pump them up or down depending on what you think is going on. And you see what gives you the most volume stats. And then you go, okay, that's what we're going to focus. And, another big thing is receivers beating guys deep, especially as a number 2 corner. You're going up against elite receivers with elite speed. You're going to get beat deep every time. So they're just pumping speed because they know they need to be able to catch up with these receivers. And that's the most effective way for them to even start being effective on the ball before they go into their other stuff. And I mean, I could be totally wrong on all this, but that's what I'm noticing when I go through these builds and when I go through looking at the league stuff.
No, I hear you. I mean, I've got plenty of other random theories, but we're so far off.
Yeah, we're super off track. So let's get a little bit back on track. This is gonna be a little bit of a longer podcast. Let's get a little bit back. So our next team after the Wraiths, I would argue, are the Hawks.
Okay.
I feel like they're the number 4, but you could argue the Yeti or be there. I'm not saying that those teams, Yeti or Liberty, are not there. I'm looking at what the team has right now going into the season. I do believe that Liberty will move up the charts eventually as their quarterback gets a little more experience and their guys are a little more active. I think they are the soon-to-be number 2 team in that spot, but for right now, I believe the Hawks have the more complete team from what I've seen, even though the Yeti won both preseason games.
So I definitely understand. I mean, man, ranking people in the NSFC was really tough.
Yeah, it is. You guys are so close.
I can't knock me. You could pretty much fucking roll a 4-sided dice and go, yeah, I think this team is going to be in this place. And I'll be like, yeah, that's
right.
Fair.
Yeah.
I do have it as the Liberty right now in terms of total TPE for starters.
Okay.
I do agree that the Hawks are just a more balanced team, and that has helped them a lot. But I think that week 1, the Liberty are already the better team.
Okay.
Between game planning matchups, yeah, I don't know who would win between them and the Hawks. X times out of 10, but I actually picked the Liberty as the number 2 team in the NSFC.
Okay. All right. Cool. And do you see them so you see the Liberty going into the NSFC championship?
I do, yeah.
Okay. I think I would agree with you there. I don't know whether or not my season 3 predictions reflect that, but I would agree with you that the Liberty is going there, even if I don't have them ranked higher in my personal opinions right now. So that means, but.
And I do have to piggyback on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you agree with the Liberty being there or not, just the fact that you admit that it's a possibility and a decent one.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Adam was not a finalist for GM of the year is outright bullshit.
Yeah.
Really everything about that award ceremony, I think there needs to be a lot more accountability on, because those were some horrible picks.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I barely looked at that award ceremony. I had just kind of written it off as it's whatever at this point. I knew no part of me or my team or anything were gonna be there. You watch low TPE / somewhat inactive players getting awards for stuff where the sim just happened to give them favorable outcomes and things. I don't know. I disagreed with a lot that was going on there, and that's a whole different bag of worms to go in. But yes, I agree with you. Philadelphia's GM team has been solid. They've made good picks. They've made good trades. They've been developing players in positions of need. I think they're going to start pushing to be one of the bigger forces in the league.
Yeah, and I think that march has already begun. I think that this is their first playoff year.
Yeah, and good for them. Honestly, we get to see our first expansion team in a playoff, and hopefully they shine.
Not too bright, hopefully.
I don't care about the Wraiths.
No.
But I mean, no, I genuinely want to see teams as a whole in the league do well, with the exception of the Outlaws. They've had their time; they can leave somebody else win. But so who would you have next? I would say we've got the Hawks, we've got the Liberty. I feel like you have the Hawks next after the Liberty.
I do, yeah. But we
kind of flip flopped on those.
Go ahead.
I said we kind of flip-flopped on those because I had the Hawks above the Liberty right now, but I feel like that'll switch towards the end. You have them switched right now based on potential, I'm assuming.
So with the Yeti, I've got them at the bottom just because I feel like, they are in that fire sale mentality still and building for next year, whereas the Hawks are still the, hey, we're going back.
Right. And I just realized that I said Yeti and I meant Liberty.
No worries.
So, yes, I would agree with you 100%. Yeti are in fire sale mode. They've won both their preseason games, but I don't know that trend continues, especially with getting rid of the most players that they have.
Yeah, and I think right now the Yeti are a slightly stronger team than the Hawks, but it's close.
Now,
but like I said, I feel like the Hawks are gonna have more energy, more activity over the course of the season, and that very slight lead that the Yeti have is going to disappear.
Right. So do you have the Yeti above or below? I would say the SaberCats and the Yeti are the next toss-up team for me, especially with the SaberCats preseason performance. They're showing that their defense is showing up a little bit more. Offense is showing up a little bit more. So the question is, Hawks or SaberCats or Yeti, who do you have higher?
I actually have the Yeti winning 2 games more than the Cats. For me, I didn't think it was that close. The Cats still have a lot of ground to make up.
Right. I'm looking forward to seeing what goes on, honestly, because the Yeti have fire sailed. They got rid of a significant amount of high TPE players, of active players, and they've picked up things for the future, but they're definitely not in win now mode, especially with their new GM team. So I think that will be interesting, especially seeing how they kind of play around with play calling and other stuff and depth charts, because that factors into this a bunch too. You'll see real quick that you switch a team, if you go into the sim and switch up a team's, not the depth chart, but if you just switch up a team's pass run ratios or blitz ratios or scheme that they run, they go from the Outlaws, go from the Ultimate Champions to the Legion real quick. Especially if you switch them to like a West Coast offense or a spread offense. The spread they do all right with, but it doesn't matter what's specific to them. But you switch stuff up like that, and you're throwing a wrench in it. And I think the Yeti, while they found a great preseason thing, they decided right away in the preseason, we're going to go out guns blazing and show what we've got. And other teams are like, well, we've got all these new players. Let's see what schemes work for us and adjust from there. And the Yeti GMs are going to have to kind of switch things up and feel out what's going on as other teams around them change much quicker. And they're going to have to get used to these new responsibilities that they may not have had before and try to learn how much these play calling attributes affect their teams.
It should be noted that the Cats, in starting TPE, are not far behind the Yeti at all.
Right.
So again, it's on projected activity, and unfortunately for a lot of the season, your guys' growth was pretty low.
Last season,
so that is hurting your average right now. So now I have an uncharacteristically low perception of what you guys are going to do over the course of the season.
Yeah, I was going to say, does any of your projections on TPE factor in the change that came about when Darren Smallwood traded?
No. So like I said, it's just a one season. This is what they did from preseason last year to preseason
Right.
this year.
Yeah, and I understand that. And based on that projection, I would totally understand you. I feel like if you go back and break it down to TPE received before and after the Smallwood trade, you'll see a giant spike.
And no, I fully get that. I was just kind of explaining the method. I wanted to be consistent in how I did it.
No, you can't.
There are going to be teams that fall through the cracks on predictions, like the Cats.
Right. You can't be objective and change it up for one team. That would be a total pointless activity because it ruins your whole methodology. But yes, knowing that that's your methodology there, I can understand why you have us ranked lower. So that brings us to the Cats, who you believe don't really have a shot over the Otters to get into the postseason.
Like I said, the Otters are declining. The SaberCats on the rise. It's going to take more than one season to overcome that gap.
Sure.
Because the start of last year, the Otters were the best team.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really want to say that as many times as I can. So they've got a lot of falling that they still have to do before they lose that second playoff spot.
Yeah. So, well, we'll see. The next couple of seasons will be very telling. I'm very interested to see what happens. And then we obviously have our last place team, and I hate to say obviously, but the Legion, who I don't think you have getting more than one win this year.
I have one. If it helps, I want to say did a shit ton of just sims.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say he had them closer to 2.
Okay.
So that's a little disturbing. But yeah, I mean that's what it is. I think they'll get one. I just don't see them. I don't see the sim being able to work hard enough to overcome that advantage. Like, I know you mentioned the 25% base. So what I do, I always say starting TPE. So I take the best 11 from each group if I can make it work.
Mm-hmm.
If I can come up with some type of scheme that would put those 11 players on the field, which it's hard not to be able to do, then those are the top 22 that I take, and then the kicker, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that, the Legion had 3485 TPE.
Okay.
Which was an improvement of 631 from this point last year. By comparison, the Liberty are at 5310, which was 2700 better than this time last year.
Wow.
The Outlaws are at 6038, I believe. I'm looking for them. 6093, there we go. Which is about 2300 better. Now, bear in mind, updates hadn't been completely finished because we had some updater issues.
Right.
So there's a little bit of wiggle room on those numbers. I want to say the Outlaws is actually a little bit higher, which no one wants to hear. But just to show, the gap between the Legion and a lot of these other teams.
Right.
I think even at home, they're looking at some blowouts.
Yep. It's definitely going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. And I feel bad saying that, but we have to take into account that these are expected outcomes, and these are predicted outcomes. And if we look at, I want to highlight, if you guys haven't checked out any of Julian O'Sullivan's ELO ratings that she took and modified from 538.com, it's done a great job. I think she's up to 80% accurate predictions on whether or not a team's going to win. She's got there's a reason the Legion are at the bottom, and it's not looking well. Hopefully, I'm hoping that she puts out some further ones and we can start getting some weekly stuff from that. I know that's not always possible, and I know she works very hard, but that I would love to see that weekly, because that'd be something I could bring up in my podcast of here's our weekly predictions for the stuff, or at least, based on the 4 weeks, based on a kind of a projection status. But it's not looking good for Legion right now. But the Blaster Blade trade, the other stuff going on there, they've got Artie Sevilla coming in as GM, as co-GM or whatever. We've got some good moves. HFFO is back from his apparently car accident. But like they have the tools to become better. I just need to see them use it.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
All right, so that's how we think the teams are kind of gonna do. We think the obviously the Outlaws are gonna do the best. We think the Legions are gonna do the worst. That's kind of neither here nor there. let's touch a tiny bit, because this could be a whole different can of worms if we let it touch a tiny bit into the DSFL. Going right now, we know as we are recording this, we're not watching, but it is there. The DSFL preseason games are currently going on. All 4 weeks will be simmed this week, so we get to see a whole bunch of info there. What did you think of, let's go back a little bit on that, what did you think of the DSFL draft?
I think it had a lot of problems. For one, we didn't find out all the send-downs really early.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really know if a lot of players were even fair game, in terms of who was eligible. I would have to say the biggest controversy was Big Bot, who got sent down. Again, this guy would be a starter on a lot of teams. He's already above 200 TPE. He was a send down. And I guess we have a rule where GMs draft themselves with the first pick of the second round. This guy is 100 TPE higher than the next closest player. He went in the second round.
Wow.
And he's active on top of that. So this is a guy who's going to be capped out at 250,
Yeah, because there's that cap.
So I think that gives the team a really unfair advantage. So I think that they're the favorite to win it all this year.
Okay. What team did he go to again?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you broke up for a second.
The Luchadors.
The Luchadors, gotcha. So the Luchadors, just because of Big Bot.
Honestly, having a defensive end who's that dominant, remember, there's not much O-line talent in this.
Right. There's they're essentially just they're like bots plus. They're not.
It's mainly fillers. There were a couple of inactive players that went. I want to say the best one was 80 TPE. I mean, we're not talking about major talent here.
Right.
And so, he's going to absolutely destroy those O-lines.
Yeah, he is. He's going to eat some quarterbacks.
But it should be interesting. I built a team out of almost completely inactives that fit a certain scheme. Because I like the idea of having a team full of players that I can move around however I wanted and wouldn't care because they don't exist.
Okay.
So I think I built a really cool system for the Marshals out of inactives. But I think any pick other than the Luchadors is hard to justify.
Gotcha. So, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I did not see the draft. I have skimmed through it. I thought there were a couple of interesting choices. My first one being Pierno going with a first round pick over someone like we know him as Dad, but it's BK. He's quarterback. Yeah,
Pierno has been more active. I mean.
He has been, but I think the other one is higher TPE is planning on being more active and is has kind of come back to life here in the last couple of days. He's been very active in our Discord. I think it'll be interesting. That's what I'm most interested about for this DSFL stuff. I love the QB controversy stuff. We get this cool, not controversy, but we get to kind of see it's going to be kind of like college where we've got these QBs who we think are going to be awesome, and we get to see them kind of unfold over a year and see what happens. Because we all know what happened coming into like this draft for the most recent NFL draft with quarterbacks we thought were going to be awesome falling far, and like Deshaun Kaiser was seen as the best overall pick, and he goes the second round, and
that's the third,
second. He was the Browns' second round pick.
Okay.
No. Sorry, I don't mean to be a dick about that. I was a huge Browns fan, so I paid attention. But I mean, and then we have someone like Trubisky coming out of nowhere, popping way the heck up and going first overall. And I think that's kind of a little bit what happened, but we can see what happens with them now that they're in a league and can kind of show up, see what their activity looks like, see what their stats look like. And, we get to start seeing these call-ups, and I think the DSFL is a fun concept done maybe a season too early, maybe not. I don't know. And it's just got some hiccups as it's its first year, but it'll become something cool that we can look forward to, kind of like our own college league.
Yeah. And I like the fact that we just did a minor league instead of a college league, by the way.
Yes. It's a little bit easier. It's a lot simpler to coordinate. And it's a lot easier to follow instead of just having everybody be on a college team or in a college league, and that's been done to death. So we have a minor league, which I believe we need in the actual NFL, but that's beside the point. So DSFL, not a ton to say right now. It's super early. I don't know that, I'm sure he'll come back on the show at some point, and we'll definitely talk about this whole DSFL thing and who we think are the outstanding players and stuff and what this means for the league and what this looks like in terms of the draft. But for right now, I think it might be too soon to say what's really going on there.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that's a great idea. I'd like to come back in about 2 weeks or so and just kind of talk about how the first season is going.
Yeah, and I would be glad to have you back. But I think that pretty much covers it for the show this week. We addressed as much as we could without any more happening. We unfortunately don't get the pleasure of waiting until Friday to hear about the stuff. We want to get this out before the season actually happens, and I'm going away this weekend, so this was really our best opportunity to talk about it. But I think the league is off to a good start. Season 3's up and underway for the most part. It's exciting time of the year. Rookies are showing up, doing their thing, and veterans are coming in and showing up and doing their thing. So I want to thank you again for coming on the show. You've always been super, super analytical and stuff. I know you pay a bunch of it more attention, way more attention than I do to the league, but it's always good to have someone here to bounce ideas off of and hear some controversy. Maybe not controversy, but here's some ideals and talk about what we think is going on. I beg you all, please go ahead, if you haven't already, read Casey Colby's thing. It's called By the Numbers, BUY, correct?
Yep.
By the Numbers. He gives you his rankings, his breakdowns. Did you fix that thing where the Otters didn't have a season record next to them?
Yeah, thanks to Valtukin, by the way, for pointing that out. I don't know how I left it off, but I'd already calculated it. I just forgot to write it in there, but it's there.
But he gives you his season breakdowns, how he thinks, why he thinks what he thinks, and it's a pretty good read. It's not too long. Does a great job of explaining stuff. As always, he's always a little controversial, but I love having him on the show for just that reason. It's great to hear someone who's definitely invested a lot of time into the league address their feelings on it. So, Casey Colby, thank you again, as always, for being my guest here. Hopefully I'll get you back in a couple weeks. We can talk DSFL stuff. But until then, guys, thank you so much for listening. Once again, thank you to Casey Colby for coming in. Thank you for all of my loyal listeners. If you followed me on SoundCloud, I don't know why, but thank you very much. I always appreciate that. You're listening to this on YouTube now because I now have to upload here just to keep up with traffic so I can keep all of my stuff up. So being that I am now an official YouTuber, I have to say smash that like button, hit subscribe, pay me to my Patreon, give me money. My merch will be available soon. Actually, it won't. I don't have any merch. If you like what I said, please say it in the comments. If you don't like it, dislike it, whatever. All those stereotypical YouTuber crap. Thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys next week. The next podcast up should be the one with my interview with Air Merzer, and after that should be the one with Ballerstorm, so look forward to those in the future. Until next time, SaberCast listeners, thank you very much, and have a great day.